would like to call this meeting of the Prince William County School Board to order. A motion is in order for the approval of the closed session agenda. Ms. Zargarpur.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the closed session agenda as recommended.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Wall seconds the motion. Any discussion? Please vote. Ms. Jessie votes yes.
Okay, so the vote is 6 yes, 1 not present vote. Williams, motion passed.
Motion to enter closed session is in order.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Zargarpur.
I move that pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711 and 2.2-3712, the Prince William County School Board enter closed session for the following reasons. 1, to discuss with the superintendent and staff the resignation, performance, appointment, and release of specific employees, and to receive advice on related legal issues as provided by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A, 1 and 8. 2, to review and take action on the disciplinary appeals and requests for religious exemptions for individual students as provided by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A, 2 and 8. 3, to consult with Division Counsel and receive legal advice on legal matters relating to specific employees and students as provided by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A, 1, 2, 7, and 8. And 4, to consult with staff and legal counsel and to receive information relating to plans protecting the safety and security of students, staff, and the public, as well as school facilities, as provided by Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A, 8, and 19.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Williams.
Second.
Any discussion? Please vote. Lori, did you vote?
She got it.
She
The
voted.
vote is 7 yes, 1 absent. Ralston, motion passed.
At this point, the Prince William County School Board will enter closed session and return in approximately 1 hour. Thank you. Okay, the Prince William County School Board will now return to open session from closed session. Moving on to the closed session certification, a motion is in order. Ms. Zargarpur.
Mr. Chairman, I move that pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3712, the closed session of the Prince William County School Board meeting of November 16, 2021, is be certified by adopting the following resolution. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Prince William County School Board hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard and discussed or considered by the school board.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Williams.
A second.
Any discussion? Please vote.
The vote is 7 yes, 1 absent. Ralston, motion passed.
Moving on to the approval of appointments and releases of specific employees, a motion's in order.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the appointments and releases of specific employees as presented in closed session.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Williams.
Second.
Any discussion? Please vote.
The vote is 7 yes, 1 absent. Ralston, motion passed.
Moving on to 9.02, a motion's in order.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the request for religious exemptions from compulsory school attendance in case number RE 21-22.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Jessie,
I second.
any discussion? Please vote.
The vote is 7 yes, 1 absent. Ralston, motion passed.
9.03, parent appeal motion's in order.
Mr. Chairman, I move that for the reasons set forth in the Student Management and Alternative Program Department's letter of October 12, 2021, the Prince William County School Board approves staff's recommendation for the long-term suspension of student HS 22-010 for the remainder of the first semester of the 2021-22 school year through January 27, 2022, and that the school board also approve the Student Management and Alternative Program Department's recommendation for the student's return to school. Any non-traditional education eligibility determination contained in the Student Management and Alternative Program Department letter, the student's placement at the time of his or her return to school, if recommended by Student Management and Alternative Programs Department, and Student Management and Alternative Program Department's recommendation, if any, regarding eligibility for computer-based instruction while on long-term suspension.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I second.
Ms. Williams seconds the motion. Any discussion? Please vote.
The vote is 6 yes, 1 no. Williams, 1 absent. Ralston, motion passed.
Okay. Moving on now, I'd like to call the meeting of the Prince William County School Board to order. We'll move to the Pledge of Allegiance. McClett, do you want to lead us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Moving on to the approval of the public meeting agenda, motions in order.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Zargarpur.
I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the public meeting agenda as recommended.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Williams.
I second.
Any discussion? Please, Ms. Jessie.
I'd like to welcome Ms. Linnell Wiggins to the Sacred Safe School Advisory Council. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion, please vote.
The vote is 7 yes, 1 absent. Ralston, motion passed.
Next, moving on to the adoption of the consent agenda, motions in order.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Prince William County School Board approve the public meeting consent agenda as recommended.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Williams.
second.
Any discussion? Ms. Williams.
I just, for 1303, I'm glad that we are acknowledging Computer Science Education Week, and hopefully one day coding will be considered an acceptable use for substitution for foreign language requirements for those students that can't meet foreign language. And clearly, coding and computer science is an integral part of the fabric of our society. So I'm glad that we're celebrating it.
Excellent. Please vote.
The vote is 7 yes, 1 absent. Ralston, motion passed.
Okay, great. Moving on to citizen comment time. Those citizens who signed up in advance with the clerk may address the school board this evening when they are called to the podium. The citizen comment period for regular school board meetings is limited to 1 hour, with the first half hour reserved for comments on the agenda items only, and the second half hour for comments on agenda items or other topics germane to the operations of the policies of the Prince William County Schools. We have 0 speakers on agenda items today and 9 on non-agenda. Speakers will have 3 minutes to speak. Please use proper decorum and manners while at the podium. If you do not do so, you'll be asked to step aside. When you are called to the podium, please state your name and address for the record. I will call the first 3 speakers can move up to the front, or 4. John Johnson, Lorena Clark, Megan Colby Carrera, Rakia Ali. John Johnson.
Good evening, school board members and audience. My name is John Johnson, 11996 Fairville.
Is your mic on? Can someone help him with his mic? Is it on?
I'm sorry, could you hear me? Okay. One of the silver linings that there has been such a thing to COVID-19 is that as a parent, I've taken an even more rigorous look at what my kids have been learning in school. And I've grown concerned that the increased focus on equity, diversity, and culturally responsive teaching and instruction has been seriously misplaced.
Sir, just if you can raise the microphone up or something, or lean forward, maybe that might help, because the folks in the back are telling me they can't hear. Let's reset the clock for him, guys. Give me a sec. Reset the clock, please. Huh? That's fine, but let's reset the clock. Okay, great.
Test. Absolutely. Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, one of the silver linings that there has been such a thing to COVID-19 is that as a parent, I've taken an even more rigorous look of what my kids have been learning in school. And I've been growing increasingly concerned that a focus on equity, diversity, and culturally responsive teaching or instruction has been seriously misplaced and is failing to address the effects that COVID-19 has had on students overall. My concern, aside from events from the past year, also stems from referencing numerous Prince William County School Service resource websites. Some of the resources list organizations that actively promote topics such as critical race theory and social justice with anti-racism education. Culturally responsive teaching, or culturally responsive instruction, that has been recently referenced by some members of the school board, was developed by an author who is also widely known for her work in promoting CRT and other such divisive or inflammatory topics. Virginia's own Ed Equity website has several pages that have similar reading lists that include other similar material, including the controversial How to Be an Anti-Racist, as part of its suggested reading list by an author who has asserted that all institutions are devised to perpetuate racism. Taken all together, along with news and events over the last year, as a parent, I'm having a hard time reconciling and understanding and believing that all of this is benign, or that my concerns about cultural or equity instruction are overrun. It would be tempting for me to advocate that anything equity, cultural, or critical related content be summarily dismissed or just more or less ridiculed, much like those who have equally ridiculed or gaslighted those who have tried to bring up similar questions or concerns. But as a parent, I would like the board to consider greater transparency and for parental access to educational materials that are being used to teach equity or culturally responsive content to our children, or at least the option to potentially opt out. I would also like to see further concrete steps in terms of how the school board is going to address and best help all students in Prince William County recover academically from this past school year from COVID-19. The only initiative that I've witnessed or have read so far revolves around the allocation of approximately $4.6 million across all 96 schools for tutoring. Tutoring that would supposedly take place for 30 minutes, 3 times a week. I'm struggling to understand this, given that there's numerous teacher shortages, not just in Prince William County, but throughout the state of Virginia. So a little bit of connecting tissue and linking logic would kind of help, I think, help me understand that at least. I'm absolutely all for an education that should tell the complete story of our country, even when it has fallen short of its own ideals. There's absolutely room for sober reflection and instruction in addressing racism in the classroom. But we can do better than teaching cultural or equitable theories that supposedly will benefit all, that actually have political and practical prescriptions attached to it. At the end of the day, I think parents do have a say in what our children learn and to the ideas of which they're exposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Lorena Clark?
Good evening, Dr. McDade, school board members, and others. My name is Lorena Clark, and my address is on file with the clerk. I don't often speak at the board meetings as I feel it shouldn't be my job to do so. It is my opinion that we should be able to do our jobs as professionals and be trusted and expected to do so. With that being said, I stand before you as an employee who has worked at a couple of locations in the county in my 10 years of record. I stand before you tonight because of site-based management. Prince William County is extremely large. No one can deny that. It requires common policies, communication, procedures, and finally trust that those in charge will follow the policies and regulations the county has in place. Employees, no matter where they are assigned, should have the same procedures, expectations, and requirements. That isn't so. This is not because of anything except the person in charge at each site. While I understand we are not clones, and we are trained in the art of education, county policies should be translated and applied to the same across all sites. Sick leave at some sites requires a note from doctors, or you are not allowed to take your sick leave. We don't even expect that from our students. A parent saying the child was sick was all that is needed for students to be excused. Employees must pay the copay to see a doctor, to get a note, to be paid for their sick leave. As this policy is not the same across all sites, it is frustrating for employees who must jump through the extra hoops to use our sick leave to stay home and not get others sick. It is not fair and it is not equitable. This causes an unnecessary burden on staff at the sites where administrations use this policy. There are many issues with site-based management outside of the example given. At the elementary level, some sites are having CLT meetings 4 times a week, while others are doing it by email, allowing for their 45 minutes of planning each day. This puts an added stress on those educators who have less planning time due to site-based decisions. Resources that should be standard across the board, like textbooks, are site-based. This leaves inequities between sites where one site purchases a physical book along with an electronic version for all students, and another decides to only purchase a physical book, which becomes a class set, and students are left with no book to use outside the classroom. Sites that are permitted to charge lab fees to students can purchase additional experiences and supplies that sites that are not permitted to charge fees can access. Students, parents, and employees talk about the differences between sites due to site-based management. When students know they are not getting the same educational experience as the sites that do offer these extras because of site-based management is an equity issue. These are just a few examples of site-based management and the inequity and added stress it can cause staff and students. I respect that each administrator has their own style and wants to apply it to their location. It is the discrepancy between the sites in the universal rights, respect, and treatment of employees that I call into question. Please consider reevaluating how the county policies are being implemented at the site level. We are struggling for employees across the spectrum. We need bus drivers.
Thank you, Ms. Clark.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Megan Colby Correa. After her will be Ms. Rokia Ali, Kimberly Stewart, and Rebecca Dar.
Hello, my name is Megan Colby Correa. I'm an 11th grader at Freedom High School and a part of CENS, or the Center for Environmental and Natural Sciences, and the Prince William County Marine Debris Project. I would like to thank everyone on the board for formally recognizing America Recycles Day. In response to America Recycles Day, I'll be talking about plastic water bottles. 76% of students in Freedom High School and Patriot High School surveyed use of 1 or more plastic water bottles on a regular day. At this rate, there are over 5,000 plastic bottles being used between the 2 schools in 1 day. When a plastic water bottle is thrown away, it either ends up in a landfill or in the environment. This is especially true for Prince William County, as less than 38% of bottles are recycled. Though ending up in the landfill is better than ending up in the environment, Sarah Jeanne Royer at the University of Hawaii has found that they release methane gas and ethylene gas. These 2 greenhouse gases contribute to climate change. So even in the landfill, plastic water bottles contribute to the destruction of our environment. When the bottles go into the environment, They will eventually be washed into a river, lake, stream, or other water source, which will flow into the ocean. This becomes a larger problem than being in landfills because it is estimated that 50 to 70% of the Earth's oxygen is produced by microscopic organisms in the water called phytoplankton. Pollution affects their ability to photosynthesize and, therefore, their ability to create oxygen. On top of that, plastic bottles take 450 years to break down, and they never completely decompose. Upon breaking down, they become microplastics which never leave our environment. These microplastics are extremely harmful to smaller marine life, which consume them. As a result of biomagnification, which is simply the idea that toxins are more prevalent in higher tier consumers because they consume many of the smaller organisms that each contain some of the toxin, these toxic plastics will eventually reach our larger animals, including those we commonly eat. In other words, as water bottles contaminate our environment, we contaminate ourselves through the food we eat. To combat this, we must make a change, and that change starts with reusable water bottles. By using a reusable water bottle as opposed to a plastic water bottle, one person could save an average of 1,460 water bottles per year from going to a landfill or ending up in our environment. This change starts with people like you and I. By using reusable water bottles, we could set an example and create a ripple effect that could greatly impact not only our future, but the next generation's future as well. That's why we have brought some reusable water bottles for each of you to be role models for others and to help keep our environment clean. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Rokia Ali?
Good evening, school board members, Dr. McDade, and student representatives. I am Rokia Lee, a sophomore at Freedom High School, and I want to thank you for giving us a chance to express the importance of using reusable water bottles and to wish you all happy National Recycling Day. Next, I want you to know why we should be thinking and calling for action every day and not just today. In a survey distributed to the school's district's 13 high schools, it was found that in 180 days, approximately 9 million bottles in our local communities and homes were used. This number will continue to increase if we do not act today, and it will harmfully impact many lives, such as our own and the wildlife. That is why we need a call for action, not just one we keep in our agenda, but one where we get things done. I encourage members of our school district, including everyone in this room, every student, faculty, and staff member to use reusable water bottles for the sake of our future and the futures of those to come who are depending on our work today, and the important wildlife. In addition to bottle usage, over 17 million barrels of oil is used to create more than 50 million plastic water bottles per year, which could fuel 1.3 million cars for an entire year or power 190,000 homes. Also, a reusable water bottle takes less oil to produce, replaces all the plastics that we would have used, and thereby reduces both our carbon footprint and helps reduce the plastic burden on landfills, oceans, streams, and other places that plastic waste ends up on. Thank you again for giving me a chance to speak tonight, and I hope I made a change to use reusable water bottle because it starts with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Kimberly Stewart?
Good evening. My name is Kimberly Stewart, and my address is on file. Miss Sarah woke up this morning at 5 a.m. to get ready for work. Before she had finished getting ready, she was already thinking about how to finish grading those papers that didn't get done last night, the assignment she needed to upload to Canvas, the meeting she had with a student out for COVID to make sure they had the work they need, the 504 teacher narrative due today, the IEP meeting she has after lunch, and how to get her son to swim practice on time if the bus loop runs late again today. She put herself together, grabbed her school bag, and headed off to work, kissing her kids goodbye for the day before the sun was even up. She gets into her classroom and immediately is greeted by 6 emails on top of the 2 she didn't have time to respond to in the previous evening because she was finishing the math section grades and updating ParentView. She spends time responding to all the emails politely and as quickly as possible, knowing she has to run down to the copier to make the last of the copies before students arrive and she is on the bus loop. She makes her cup of coffee and sets it aside to run to the copier to find that it's broken again, so she will need to upload the assignment now in Canvas and switch up her original intended instructional plan. She runs back to the classroom to set up the board, post the objectives for the day, set out the first activity, and prep the smart board. Something's wrong with the smart board and it won't let her share her screen. She's immediately emails for tech support as the principal is passing by and asks her to please cover for her colleague who will be out today because she could not get a sub to pick up the job. Now the grading that was going to get done will have to wait for swim practice. She quickly realizes she forgot to cut out the pieces she needs for the math lesson because of her student had an emergency issue yesterday, and 5 minutes before 26 kiddos will be in her classroom, she frantically tackles what's left for her to do before she grabs her coat to bus loop, knowing that her cold cup of coffee will have to wait until after later. It's only 9 a.m. For the past 2 months, I've come to these meetings and watched as your teachers have continuously stood up here and addressed their concerns regarding the current increasing demands and expectations they face almost daily. I have heard them ask for increased support, resources, and solutions to the growing issues they face. In order for this district to provide world-class educators, a world-class education, we must treat our teachers like world-class educators. We must hire the best, provide them the best, and so they can provide our students their very best. I offer each of you a challenge tonight over the next few weeks to get into our schools, our classrooms, and shadow a day in the life of our teachers at all levels, who are overworked, stressed, exhausted, burnt out teachers, and see the true nature of the daily work and the challenges and issues they face that you are all asking them to do. The decisions you make impact real people, and these decisions and these people are begging you to take something off their plate, provide them proper support, and pay them for the true work they are continuously doing. If you are truly working to support all stakeholders, then support our teachers, because they are the foundation and the first line to providing students and parents of this district a world-class education, and you're currently failing at receiving a grade of an F.
Rebecca Dar. Rebecca Dar. Jessica Newton, and then after her will be Wendy Haddock and Carmen Thomas. Jessica Newton.
Hi, my name is Jessica Newton. I'm in Gainesville. My address is on file. I'd like to address the town hall that happened last night. For Lori to come out and say that this town hall was to learn about culturally responsive instruction and then deny anyone the ability to question critical race theory is completely insane. Many of us referenced Maria Burgos, who was selected to be on the panel last night. We questioned her ed equity training for our teachers on the VDOE website, which clearly references critical race theory today and Marxist Paulo Freire. By the end of the Q&A, Maria admitted that she is, in fact, implementing certain tenets of critical race theory. So I ask again why we cannot just be open and honest about what we are doing. The point of the town hall was for an open discussion, not for Lori's narrow definition, allowing for only questions that she saw fit. The VDOE and PWCS have openly embraced Paulo Freire through culturally responsive instruction using his education framework. Maria Burgos quotes in her own equity training, you can look it up on YouTube, education either functions as an instrument which is used to facilitate integration of the younger generation into the logic of the present system and bring about conformity, or it becomes the practice of freedom, the means by which men and women deal critically and creatively with reality and discover how to participate in the transformation of their world. Paulo Freire, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Who is this person? Paulo Freire prescriptions for critical pedagogy were informed by a broader battle for social justice. They were also importantly a product of his commitment not just to social reform, but also to a socialist revolution. Freire was a Marxist. You are trying to turn our children into little social justice warriors, and we see you. School is not the place. No matter how hard you try to change the definitions of the words and hide your intentions, even Maria Burgos doesn't hide it anymore. Why are you? I've seen lots of comments on how I or we should host our own town hall where we can talk about critical race theory all we want there. What good will that do? The definition of a town hall is an event at which a politician or public official answers questions from members of the public. Lori only wants to answer questions direction she likes and sees fit. Your own equity and inclusion officer admitted to including tenets of critical race theory in her training. It's time to fess up. Which one of you will be bold enough to address us openly and honestly about your intentions? Because Miss Lori Williams isn't it. Thank you.
Wendy Haddock.
My name is Wendy Haddock, and my address is on file with the clerk. I'm speaking to you tonight to raise my concerns about the school district's COVID contact tracing and mandatory quarantine policy. I submitted a letter to the board members last Friday stating my concerns. My daughter was contact traced for the second time last Monday. Through my communication with her school, I discovered what the policy really involves. A student who is only exhibiting 2 COVID-like symptoms, 2, is put into isolation and sent home. We all understand what the COVID symptoms are. There's a wide range of COVID-like symptoms, and they mimic other illnesses and other conditions, such as seasonal allergies. A student could come to the nurse, say, I have a runny nose and a sore throat from seasonal allergies, and they are sent home to quarantine and considered a probable COVID case. Parents, please hear what I am saying. Your child is being sent home to be mandatory quarantined by this school system for only 2 COVID-like symptoms, and they are not required to take a COVID test to prove that they are positive. Then the school goes on to conduct contact tracing and sends home hundreds of schools. Your school system currently has 446 children in quarantine, and is based on not COVID-tested cases. This means a student who has been deemed in close contact will miss 7 to 14 days of instructional learning activities for a student who was not even tested positive for COVID. Mandatory quarantine is enforced for someone who maybe only has a common cold or a sinus infection. This policy must be revised immediately to include mandatory testing for a student exhibiting symptoms. This school district, I believe, received $112 million federal dollars in COVID relief aid. Some of that money should immediately been taken to purchase COVID tests. If this policy continues, then all students, fully vaccinated and unvaccinated, must be quarantined, because it's well documented that a fully vaccinated person can indeed have a breakthrough case of COVID, carry the viral load in their nasal passages, and spread COVID to others. Therefore, if you continue to only mandatory quarantine unvaccinated students, you are not helping to stop the spread of COVID. If you continue with this contact tracing and mandatory quarantine, it must involve both unvaccinated and vaccinated students. How can the school district make COVID policy decisions when you are unaware of how many exact COVID tested positive students you have in your school district?
Carmen Thomas. Carmen Thomas.
Hello. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity given tonight to let me speak on some concerns that I have. Over the last 2 weeks, my son, who has been quarantined, he was sent home last Wednesday. He has tested negative. He does not have any COVID symptoms. But yet, he is mandated to stay at home for 3 additional days after testing negative. When I asked the school to explain why this is, there's different explanations. One of the explanations is we start on day 0. I've never heard of this explanation before until Monday. On Monday, the nurse told me that the dates she gave me were incorrect. Then she also explained to me that he had a second person that he was around, so now he has to restart quarantine again. He has already missed an entire week of school. He was sent home with a computer. He was also told that he would be I do not say that word right, but online learning. That means there's no teacher monitoring my son. I work outside of the home. Because my son is 11, I am not going to leave him home. He is an elementary school child. The school told me I should leave him at home and go to work. That was their suggestion. If that doesn't make you angry enough, it should. That is wrong, number one. My son has been in tears since yesterday. He is confused. He feels he's being punished, but yet he is negative for COVID and mandated to stay at home until Thursday. He has no symptoms. Why is he still required to be at home? The same thing happened to my daughter in September. She is in kindergarten. She is 5. Again, I work outside the home. I am a single parent of 5 kids. I have them all the time. 98% of the time. It is up to me to find childcare. It is up to me to work and to provide for them. How can I do that if you guys are constantly quarantining children that do not have any symptoms that test negative? Each of my children have tested negative. I have not had one case of COVID in my home. Not one. This entire pandemic. It is infuriating to me. My children are very frustrated. All they want to do is go to school. It's amazing to me that that is not taken seriously. They want their education. They want to be at school. Please, the quarantine needs to be looked at, and the restrictions need to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That concludes citizen comment time. We will now move on to 1501, the annual school calendar. This was on for information 2 weeks ago. The calendar options were put out for public comment. And just to review very quickly, the respondents to the survey chose option A, which is very similar to this school year. The majority of respondents, which was 79% of the, I think, 3,000 plus that responded to the survey. Is that right, Dr. Casada? 79% of respondents chose option A, which is exactly this year's calendar, which is a 2-week Christmas break and the other holidays. 75% of parents, 84% of staff, and 80% of students. So at this point, I will entertain a motion. Ms. Zargarpur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the Prince William County School Board approve option A for the 2022-23 annual school calendar.
Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
Ms. Jessie seconds. Discussion? Anybody need a review on the options? We're good? Okay. At this time, please vote.
The vote is 7 yes, 1 absent. Ralston, motion passed.
Excellent. Moving on to our student representatives time. Joining us this evening on the dais is Maklit Surafel, a junior who attends Hilton High School. Ms. Surafel.
Maklit Surafel. Salam. My name is Maklit Surafel, your alternate student rep for the year 2020-2021. Saying that doesn't get old. It really is such an honor to represent the brightest and most dedicated students in the state. Not to mention the absolute delight I have about conversations that butt whenever I reiterate local government proceedings. I've come to realize that most Prince William County students are active in their voice and noble in their thoughts, a practice that ensures positive navigation of difficult conversations, leading to progress, a practice that many adults, let alone high school students, are not used to. In fact, we as a state just recently encountered an important opportunity to display said action in a powerful way, the gubernatorial election. Prince William County students who were eligible to vote came out and played their part in a productive society. Our timelines, Instagram feeds, and For You pages were flooded with proud red, white, and blue stickers and snapshots of long lines. Middle school students learned about the importance of a representative democracy and discuss their beliefs respectfully. Despite the rain and other presiding efforts, it is safe to say that our generation is picking up the pace. When we aren't being active in our community and being responsible citizens, we're having a ball, literally. Thanks to Student Initiative, this year's homecoming week was safe and fun. At all homecoming dances, students were either outdoors or masked. The Student Athlete Club from Garfield led their annual pep rally. Students like Jerica Mahoney, Serenity Walker, and Stephanie Reyes worked overtime to decorate and organize activities for their fellow students. At Osborne Park, Shadi Habib, the junior class president, as well as his fellow SCA members, inspired his class to have school spirit. At my school, Hilton, Christian Daniels and I had the honor of organizing and directing a pep rally with student MCs. The junior class won the Spirit Stick. This passion-fueled weekend proved that all Prince William County students have at least one thing in common: resilience. Our ability to look at last year, look back at ourselves, and say no excuses proves that with drive and power, by putting in the work and hours, there's no limit as to how far our initiatives can reach. The last line was for the students, but if you understood the reference, good on you. I'd like to close my introduction and use my platform to remind my fellow students to be kind in their words. We're so used to a virtual setting that we often forget the importance of how you come across online. Intention is always something to consider on the opposite end of the screen, but at the end of the day, you are responsible for the things that you post. I myself learned a valuable lesson in being aware of your online audience and being wise about the things you say online. Respect your fellow students' backgrounds, pronouns, and beliefs. This quarter was hard, a reality check for most about the actuality of scholarly responsibility. If you're a student tuned in right now, I'm proud of you for persevering in your own way. Be kind to yourself and your teachers. I can't wait to inform you about some of the cool initiatives we have brewing for you. But until next time, peace be with you. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Very good. Moving on to Dr. McDade, Superintendent's time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. This week, as Prince William County Public Schools recognizes American Education Week, I would like to thank our teachers, support staff, administrators, and substitute educators for their dedication to our students, schools, and communities. I recognize the diligence, resilience, and commitment that you have demonstrated through this difficult pandemic, and I appreciate your efforts. I continue to listen to the feedback from our staff members and would like to assure our teachers that I am aware of concerns expressed regarding missed planning time to cover the classroom of a colleague. We have been looking into this matter and plan to provide our findings and resolution at the December 1st board meeting. I want to take this time to recognize Chanel Agee, our Library Media Programs and Research Supervisor, for earning the Virginia Council on Economic Education 2021 Virginia Outstanding Economic Educator of the Year. Ms. Agee is recognized as a strong proponent of equitable access to high-quality materials for student learning and literacy, and for her efforts in advancing economics and personal finance education through reading. This evening, Dr. Jennifer Casada, Director of Research, Accountability, and Strategic Planning, will provide a data summary of academic achievement for the first quarter of this school year. Before she begins, I would like to share some key data takeaways. First, as we shared earlier this year, it is clear the pandemic interrupted learning, and as you are aware, we have developed a comprehensive unfinished learning plan with targeted academic as well as social emotional well-being supports for students. In this first quarter grade report, you will see that there are learning challenges that continue with our students. And it's not, unfortunately, surprising results, as we anticipated this when we shared the unfinished learning plan. We were aware of the gaps and anticipated the first quarter data results would further demonstrate the struggles of the pandemic. It is important to note that while comparisons are typically made year over year, due to the impact of the pandemic, we cannot compare these results to last year, given the fact that the return to in-person learning of more than 97% of students versus last year when most students this time were virtual. A comparison of this data would not be appropriate. The results of the first quarter demonstrate the importance of accelerating our work to the greatest extent possible, especially in the area of mathematics, which is also the area where we saw the greatest impact in the State of the Schools report that was shared earlier this school year. This year, students in grades 3 through 8 took the Virginia Growth Assessment in reading and mathematics to measure growth during the school year. Individual student score reports will be provided with details of how students performed on each test item, but the growth assessments do not include a passing or failing score. The growth assessments focus on identifying skills students learned and skills that may require additional support this school year. These assessments have clearly shown that there is considerable support necessary in mathematics. That has been the consistent theme from multiple data sets, with students scoring a 45% proficiency rate. This is comparable to the results that we saw in SOL data from the prior year. Additionally, first quarter reporting also shows that our virtual students continue to face challenges to learning at a higher rate than in-person learners. We will target this student population to ensure they are receiving the necessary supports as a component of the unfinished learning plan. Lastly, the first quarter data report also shows that our English learners and our students with disabilities continue to experience greater academic challenges in comparison to their peers. Implementation of targeted supports has begun, and I believe the results of these efforts will manifest over multiple years. Our staff and students are working hard to regain ground lost during the pandemic, but it is also clear that there is a considerable amount of work to do. We are committed to staying the course, ensuring acceleration of learning through high-dosage tutoring, needed interventions, and extended and expanded learning opportunities, as well as supporting social-emotional needs. As I stated earlier, recovery will take considerable time. I am optimistic that our teachers and students will demonstrate progress throughout this school year and the years ahead, as we know this is a multi-year process towards recovery. At this time, I would like to invite Dr. Jennifer Casada to share a brief presentation with the data from the first quarter reporting period that takes a look at both grades and attendance.
All right, good evening, Chairman Lateef, school board members, and thank you, Dr. McDade, for that introduction. The purpose of this update is to provide you, the board and the public, with data from the first quarter. Just for information purposes, the first quarter ended on October 29th, and grades got finalized in the hub just before the Veterans Day holiday on November 11th. The presentation tonight provides some background information on enrollment in terms of in-person and virtual, as well as attendance. Introductory information about the new Virginia Growth Assessment is included, and elementary performance in terms of grades and reading level, and secondary performance, grades, and a failing courses analysis will also be discussed. As Dr. McDade has indicated, over 97% of students in Prince William County Schools attended school in person during the first quarter. The table on this slide includes some information about virtual and in-person enrollment. The highest proportion of virtual students has been at the middle school level. For information purposes, the breakdown for various student groups is included. No group had more than 4% in virtual instruction. This slide includes two looks at attendance for both students attending school in person and virtually. The first table shows the percent of students by the count of days missed. The first quarter had 45 days, just for information purposes. 32% of our students overall had 0 absences, and 18% had 5 or more. Absences were lower for our virtual students. The table on the right shows the percent of attendance. This is a calculation that looks at the average daily attendance divided by the average daily membership. And overall, the percent of attendance was 94% for the first quarter, which is close to a typical year. The next section of the presentation includes information about the new Virginia Growth Assessment that Dr. McDade introduced in her talking points. The Virginia legislature passed a law effective this summer that requires the administration of what they call through-year growth assessments in reading and mathematics for students in grades 3 through 8. This year, the fall growth assessment was offered earlier. The assessment is designed to be used as a baseline for determining growth over the course of the year, and also is one way to identify areas of unfinished learning from the prior school year. This fall, students were assessed on the prior year's content. And as Dr. McDade indicated, rather than assigning passing scores, these assessments are built using a vertical scale that puts all the content in a given subject area onto a single scale. VDOE's recommendation for using these scores is as a baseline for growth and as an estimate of performance on the previous year's content. Overall, 93% of our students participated in the mathematics tests and 94% participated in reading. This includes over 95% of our in-person students and just over a third of the virtual students. It's important to note that these tests had to be administered in person. This slide shows how students who took the SOL assessments in the spring also fared on the fall Virginia Growth Assessment, so for students who took both. The purpose of this is to highlight that those students came into the fall at the same level to a great extent as where they were in the spring. In this next spring, students will take the regular SOL tests and growth will be determined from the fall to the spring. As mentioned on the last slide, the proportion of students scoring in the proficient range in the fall is similar to last spring. VDOE explains that the scoring in the proficient range indicates that students have a baseline knowledge of content from last year and are prepared for new content. Again, it's important to remember these assessments were administered early in the school year. This slide also includes a link to additional information available about the growth assessments and what the scores mean. For the public, this presentation is available in board docs with the active link, and the site can be accessed through the Prince William County Schools testing website. The remainder of the presentation is about first quarter performance in terms of grades. Before looking at performance, it's important to remember that Prince William County Schools has adopted the philosophy and approach of standards-based grading, which is focused on students mastering content and allows for grade remediation and replacement. So as a result, some first quarter grades may be amended if students demonstrate mastery of the material. The next two slides look at elementary performance. This slide shows grade distributions for elementary students in grades 3 through 5 in the 4 core content areas. You'll see that the highest proportion of students earning A's was in history at 54%, followed by science at 50%, and the lowest proportion was in mathematics at 31%. You will see that very small numbers of students receive failing grades in elementary school. This next slide looks at the instructional reading level for our students in grades 1 through 5. Overall, 62% of students were showing it reading at or above grade level at the end of the first quarter, with the highest proportion in grade 5 at 69%. The metric for kindergarten students will be included at the end of the year. The next two slides look at middle school performance. This slide provides a grade distribution for each of the major subject areas at the middle school level for students in grades 6 through 8. The highest proportions of students receiving A's were found in health and PE and in fine arts, with the lowest in mathematics. And in terms of students receiving grades of F, the highest proportions were in world languages and mathematics. This slide now looks at the proportion of students failing 0, 1, and 2 or more courses overall by in-person and virtual status and for English learners and students with disabilities. This includes all students for whom we had the grades. Overall, 5% of middle school students were failing 2 or more courses, 5% of in-person students, and 14% of virtual students. And close to 10% of English learners and students with disabilities were failing 2 or more courses. And finally, the last two data slides include the same information, but at the high school level for students in grades 9 through 12. In terms of grade distributions, again, the highest proportions of students earning A's were in fine arts and health and PE, with the lowest proportion in mathematics. In terms of students receiving F's, the highest proportions were found in mathematics and in language arts. This slide again shows the failing course analysis at the high school level. At high school, 69% of students were not failing any classes and 17% were failing 2 or more. Significantly higher proportions of our virtual students at 32%, English learners 35%, and students with disabilities 24% were failing multiple courses. Dr. McDade indicated some of the key takeaways, but just to summarize, as indicated in the unfinished learning plan presentation as well as the state of the schools, mathematics remains the content area of greatest concern, and it's echoed in both the Virginia Growth Assessment data and first quarter grades. At all levels, the proportion of students receiving grades of A is the lowest in mathematics. And again, as in previous years, higher proportions of students are failing 2 or more courses at high school than at middle school. And as Dr. McDade indicated, virtual-only students were failing multiple courses at higher rates than in person, and our English learners and students with disabilities were also failing multiple courses at higher rates. In terms of what's coming next, as Dr. McDade said, the implementation of the unfinished learning plan specifically targets these areas of concern that were identified both at the end of the 2020-21 school year as well as after this first quarter of the 21-22 school year. Support in mathematics includes math coaches, targeted professional development, common assessment, and Canvas resources. Support for English learners includes professional development for teachers in academic language development, instruction, and lesson planning. And support for our students with disabilities includes, again, professional development, increased progress monitoring, and alignment of research-based interventions with students' identified areas of need. Root cause analyses will be conducted at the school and subject level to identify specific areas to address with identified students through those strategies of high-dosage tutoring and extended learning opportunities to accelerate student learning. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the superintendent's report. We'll take any questions related to the first quarter reporting data that was shared.
We'll go to Ms. Williams and then Ms. Jessie.
Thank you. Dr. Casada, I noticed for the students who are failing courses, do we know if that's do we have a more in-depth analysis as to why specifically? I'm curious to know if it's due to like missing assignments, because I know there's a difference too, especially in virtual versus in person. There tends to be a little bit more support and accountability for reminding students to complete their work on time and things of that nature. I'm wondering if we had a lot of students who just, in addition to maybe not comprehending or mastering the material, were there students that just simply didn't do their work, and that's why they're also failing? Because I know that's a first quarter issue, especially when you're readjusting and reacclimating to a school environment, with be it virtual or in person.
Ms. Williams, I'll take that question. One of the reasons in the next steps you saw a root cause analysis, because we've shared data with the schools, and then they'll be receiving disaggregated data to show at the individual school level where they stand, and then that has to happen at the individual school level, and our level associates will be working with principals to address that. There was a quick turnaround on this data, so what we saw today was just the overall division level, and that root cause analysis hasn't been done yet with the timing of the close of the first quarter and the commitment to report out as soon as possible. So that's one of the next steps, to figure out exactly what's happening as a root cause across different schools, because it'll be different reasons that different schools are experiencing this effect.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I look forward to the follow-up.
Ms. Jessie.
First of all, I want to thank you for sharing the data. We received preliminary data for the first time under your leadership, Dr. McDade, and now we're receiving quarterly data. I have a couple of questions. The Virginia Growth Assessment as a pre-assessment item, what was the timeline on that? When did that happen? When did that occur?
Mrs. Jessie, that assessment occurred throughout the month of September and into the very beginning of October, but most were assessed during September.
Okay. And I'm assuming you say baseline, I use the word pre-test, it's sort of a pre-test. So the post-test will be the actual SOL, and it would not be the same test. There would not be a post-test using this particular measure.
So that's a great question, Mrs. Jessie. The post-test will be the spring SOL, and these Virginia Growth Assessments, if you think of them, are kind of like a mini version of the SOL, so they're all coming from the same place, but it won't be the exact same assessment, but they are part of the same test development and on the same scale.
Okay. When I looked at the performance, the courses, failure rate, and in math, we are, we have, I think, a 40% drop. When I look at the grades at the middle and high school level, perhaps it seems like very few students are failing math. So are we looking at whether or not our instruction aligns with the actual test performance?
I would have to say that's a part of the root cause analysis process, where each school is really going to have to look at both grades, what has been covered in the classroom, to determine, why certain students are failing, especially as we look at the English learners and students with disabilities, and then also looking at, to what Ms. Williams said, is it a matter of missing grades? And so those kinds of answers we don't have to respond to the data, because individual schools haven't had enough time to analyze it yet. Okay. So that's what we're expecting to find more about on a school-by-school basis, because each school will look different in terms of the why.
I also noticed that the the virtual students are not doing well, and I had several slides, but have you done any preliminary look at why some of the virtual learners are not performing as well, or have you looked at that data?
I think that's all the same. The quarter just ended, and so we quickly pulled all of this data together to get it in front of you timely. But then it is going to take, even down to virtual. So Dr. Hart is overseeing the virtual program, so she'll be working with Ms. Worley to take a look at that. I think it is safe, though, to acknowledge that, you know, learning math virtually is a little bit more challenging, and so we do have to take a look at what's working for some students and not for others and how we address that. I also know that Ms. Goss has recently learned of virtual tutoring supports from an organization that has been found to be effective, and so now that we know we have those options available, there will be more supports that we'll be able to target for our virtual learners. But I can't say enough that it does take time for schools to analyze this data within their teams, and they just haven't had an opportunity to dig into it the way that we would need to have reasonable explanations for what is actually happening on a school by school basis as well as by grade level, because it'll be across the school, you'll find different reasons for different grade levels as well within the school. And we just haven't had the opportunity to do that because of the quick turnaround on presenting this with the data, and schools haven't had a lot of time to grapple with this yet.
And your English learners, that's something that seems to be something that you're going to be looking at also?
Yes, and I want to make sure that I impress upon everyone that, as I stated earlier, we unfortunately anticipated that this is what we were going to see. And so when we presented the unfinished learning plan, it incorporates multiple data sets. This is only one view of what's happening as a result of the pandemic, and we have to take all of those things into consideration. We also have to take into consideration that students are reacclimating to being in school. We do know that a part of the plan, we talked about the need for greater social emotional supports for students. That also impacts learning. So all of those things have been taken into consideration in the comprehensive plan that Ms. Goss presented to the board and to the public earlier this school year. And what we don't want to do is pile on. We want to stay the course with the plan that we have, because this plan did anticipate that we were going to continue to see data that points to the fact that we have these gaps that exist. But we do have to implement with fidelity, stay the course, and evaluate along the way to make determinations about what's working and what's not working before we make any course corrections, and being careful not to just continue to pile on more and more things, because right now teachers are doing a lot, and we're continuing to hear that, and it's challenging. So we do need to stay the course and implement the plan that we currently have in place with fidelity, understanding that the full plan, even as it is, can't be implemented all at once in 1 year.
I agree, because there's so much as a teacher starting out and having to do a pre-assessment, which was never a part of what we did necessarily. I think everyone did different things at different school levels. Actually, I'm surprised when I looked at the data how well they did on a pre-assessment in September, because it does take a while for students to acclimate. I guess there are two other questions. Are you going to disaggregate the data? And two questions. Are you going to disaggregate, and will we get I'm not asking for a mid-year report, but when will we get the next report as a board?
So we've committed that every quarter when grades reports come out, then we'll share, like we did today, we'll share that data with the board. Additionally, when it is time for the spring assessment, we'll bring that forward, but you should expect that quarterly we'll have some updates, both on the grades as well as this root cause analysis that schools will be working towards to determine, one, some of the why behind first quarter reporting, and then whether or not, to what degree we've been able to implement some of the strategies in the plan, and whether or not we're seeing benefits from that, from the data that we currently have available. So I would say quarterly, you should expect that we'll come back with whatever data sets we do have to share with the board and with the public.
It's just more than appreciated. I just wanted to, a lot of people come before this board to make presentations, and I just want to compliment Jennifer Casada. You know, I don't know, she's a data genius. I'm not sure what the term is, but you have provided us with all sorts of data in the past, and now you stepped up to the plate to working under Dr. McDade to give us additional data. You did the calendar, and that was done well with surveys, and you also provided us with additional data here. I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate your professionalism and your work. Thank you.
Mr. Wilk.
Thank you, Dr. McDade. Thank you, Dr. Casada. Just a couple things I think would be helpful. As you know, these are preliminary and early reports. One thing I would like to see potentially disaggregated with the virtual failures is how many of those are with synchronous live instruction and how much of that is asynchronous self-paced courses that students might be signed up for, because I know we offer both different types of courses here. So like an Edmentum or another program like that versus kids who might be taking live courses with Virtual Virginia or any of the courses that we offer with live instructors. So I'd like to see differences if we have that information, because I imagine the numbers are not broken down with the initial preliminary report, correct?
Right, it's not disaggregated in that way.
Okay. Another thing that possibly I'd be curious to know is, depending on availability, what neighboring jurisdictions might have as possible trends or comparisons to look at, just kind of we're seeing kind of similarities or patterns amongst other divisions as kind of like benchmarks to kind of see where we're at. And then the other thing I was thinking during this is that, you know, what support mechanisms are in place or we could put in place. I know for math and language arts English teachers who have the higher failure rates, a lot of times they have to make multiple attempts to have contact with the parents and to let them know about failure. If you look at those numbers, that's going to put a lot more on a math teacher to have to make those contacts, same with an English teacher and language arts teacher. So I want to know what could we possibly do or what is being done to better support those teachers with trying to make contact with parents, because that could take hours after school or completely consume planning to try to connect. Not that I say it's wrong, I think they do need to connect, but what else could we do to potentially help take some of that off their plates?
Thank you, Mr. Wilk. We will take those recommendations and follow up accordingly.
Thank you, Dr. McDade.
People ahead of you. Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Chairman Lateef. I'm looking at slide 15. Sorry, the failing courses high school, the virtual students. So what I see here is that 49% of our virtual students are failing at least one course. You know, that's almost, I mean, that's pretty much half. And so my question is, could we consider bringing those kids in to be virtual, out of the virtual environment and into the classroom? And I guess I'll premise that question with what kind of fluidity do we have between students who are in the virtual environment? How easily could we offer to move them into the in-person environment? What kind of capacity do we have available? Or could we have conversations with those families, you know, say, hey, like this might not be working, let's try to bring this child in. And I also recognize that we have contracts with proximity for those teachers and et cetera, et cetera. And so, you know, maybe that might be a limitation in doing that. But, I just look at those numbers. I understand it's early. There might be some reasons and we haven't done the analysis, but still, that's quite a high number of kids who maybe, for whatever reason, they're in the virtual environment. It might have a lot more to do with COVID rather than what's best for the child. And considering, you know, vaccines are now available for everybody 5 and up. There's COVID pills for people who actually get COVID and end up in the hospital, you know, that can really drastically reduce their chances of having an adverse effect from COVID. Anyway, all of that taking into consideration, my question is, what can we consider bringing these kids in, or at least offering, and how feasible would that be?
Well, we did honor that originally with reopening plans. We had to protect the seats in schools. So any student that family that decides that they want to move from virtual to in-person, the schools are staffed to cover that, right? So those seats are protected for them to return. Likewise, parents who signed up in the time frame for virtual, they have that virtual seat and the right to that seat if they want to remain in that seat. And it will be the decision of the parent to move back to in-person. We have been seeing constant movement from virtual to in-person since the start of the school year, and every week Dr. Casada provides us as a school division that data where we can see the percentage. So we've had quite a bit of, and I know, not to put you on the spot, I know we don't have that data readily available today, but we can share it with the board. So we've seen considerable movement of families moving from virtual into in-person. So at any time that a parent decides that they may want their child to move from virtual to in-person, they may do so. But they also maintain the right to keep the virtual seat that they signed up for in the process that we had from the beginning of the year. I think it would be important, something that Mr. Wilk just pointed out, that these conversations be had with parents and they make the decision that they believe is best for their student to address this, and that we continue to provide the supports regardless of what the parent might choose for their child.
Ms. Zargarpur had her hand up.
Thank you, Dr. Lateef. So I just want to take a step here because I've had a lot of conversations with parents who are concerned about learning loss and where their kids are going to be. And this is at all stages and ages. So could we talk, because I know we've talked about the high dosage tutoring, and we were also talking about staffing issues. Teachers don't have a lot of extra time. There's potential plans to bring in, possibly bring in some tutors. We heard tonight about some virtual tutoring, so that we know there's possibilities out there. And you just said that this is not something that we're going to fix in like a couple months. So I know that these numbers are reflecting, this first quarter we're just getting back. Do we know how, is anybody actually starting any of this high dosage tutoring, or how they're, I know I talked with one of my principals who gave me the whole plan of what they've been doing and how they've been doing it at her school, and it was great, but I just, maybe so that the parents can also understand, how we're planning on doing this a little bit, because that's been what I've been hearing from a lot of the parents this week.
Yes, and we heard from one of our, and during public comment from one of our parents, the concerns about the shortage of staff and teachers, how are teachers doing high dosage tutoring. And I want to reiterate that high dosage tutoring happens during the school day. So some schools have scheduled where they can utilize certified teaching staff to do high dosage tutoring in a model that they have designed within their school. But then there's also models where schools are using, college tutors or bringing in individuals from universities to support that, and now we have the option of potentially having virtual tutors. So to some degree, it is working across all schools. I cannot say that with full fidelity because some schools are having more challenges with staffing than others. And so we have been trying to look at exemplar models where schools have figured this out and it really is working well, to be able to share that practice division-wide. But we still are experiencing staffing challenges overall. But the expectation is that for high dosage tutoring, we have additional support like teachers' assistants, college tutors, pre-service teachers that can come in, and now the possibility of virtual tutoring to be able to offer both to students who are virtual as well as students who may be in person. But I don't want to overstate that we do still have significant challenges, and our school leaders are doing the best that they possibly can to make this work. I do want to ask Rita to share a little bit about some of the models that are being used currently in schools to address high dosage tutoring, which I think will also be helpful for at least one of our parents that talked about not understanding how that would work. Sure. And then if you could share a little bit, Ms. Goss, about the option for virtual tutoring that may be on the table.
Absolutely. So good evening, Chairman Lateef and school board members. One of the models, if you look at elementary school, the elementary schedule has something in it called core extension, and we've typically used that time to revisit, remediate, provide interventions to students. And so that is a time that's clearly in the schedule for elementary where this high dosage tutoring can fit naturally into the schedule. At the secondary level, they are offering those 6 sections that you may remember me speaking about before. Also, some, may be looking at utilizing what they have utilized in the past, which is maybe a flex period or an assignment to a different class. Teachers moving to tutor students during the day, utilizing additional personnel. As Dr. McDade mentioned, again, the staffing, is a concern at a number of our schools. So the exact model at every school differs, but they are really working hard to find those places in the schedule where that can fit naturally in those periods, like advisory or flex, or another time in which it doesn't impact the student's schedule. While high dosage tutoring does take place during the school day, it's important to remember that we also have the expanded extended learning opportunities where other tutoring is also taking place before and after school. And schools do have plans to implement that as well on Saturdays or at other times.
Thank you, Ms. Goss. Ms. Jackson?
Thank you, Dr. Casada, for answering my questions earlier today. And I know you're really busy and you took time to provide resources for the Virginia grade level assessment, and I just really appreciate it. As a teacher, I know it is imperative to have time to review the data and time to plan, and it does sound like the root case analysis will take considerable time. And I agree with what Dr. McDade and a little bit about what Mr. Wilkes said about the workload and on teachers right now, and I look forward to a discussion about it I think you said in December. I just want to touch back to the grades slide, and you don't need to bring it up, but when we're discussing grades and student scores, it's just a small part of a student's story, and it is helpful, even though it doesn't tell the whole story, to have trends from years past. And if we are going to compare it to neighboring divisions, it would be interesting to see if they have the same regulations with grading as it compares to whether or not students can get zeros or it's 50%, so that I can accurately interpret the data. And that's it. Thank you.
Ms. Williams, you have some.
Thank you. So first, I just kind of wanted to piggyback on what Mr. Wilk was saying about reporting requirements to parents. I think it may be worth our while to also look at the policy, because some teachers are exceptionally well at that, but per policy, just the notification of interim time can serve as notice to parents that your student is failing, and I know that from personal experience. So I'm not saying that every teacher is doing that by any means, but I am saying that I think that that's something that we need to look at across the board, because there are different notification requirements. I mean, teachers' buildings and schools also use different methods to notify parents, so it may not always be similar, because I know parents will get to a report card and be like, well, I knew my student was in trouble, and the response has been, well, grades are posted on parent view or student view, and I know that typically happens more at the high school level than at your lower level grade. So I think that that's something that we as a division probably also should look at, because I could definitely see in a higher work requirement and workload how the use of parent view for notification, and that being a primary notification, things could get missed, especially if you have a single parent household or things of that nature. I'm also, the next thing that I was thinking about, or I thought about just now when Ms. Wall was speaking is, well, first, I definitely would not, as a parent, would not take kindly to my choice being in jeopardy for my student, regardless of whether it's COVID or not, although I do I think that's a valid suggestion. But I also know that there's a difference too, because our elementary school students are using proximity, our middle school students are concurrent, and our high school students are virtual Virginia. And so I think when we look at this data and how these students are performing, we need to be specific and not just lump all virtual students together, because that's a big discrepancy in teaching styles, learning styles, everything. I have a virtual student who's already, their schedule has shifted, they're using core extension time, they're getting extra. I know that another proximity student in the same grade on the other end of the county, they're not getting the same. You know, middle school is completely different with concurrent teaching in a classroom. High school at Virtual Virginia, I don't even know really what Virtual Virginia looks like. So I think that those are significant differences, and we need to be very careful when we talk about virtual student failing, because one of the things that I'm particularly sensitive to is people lumping it together and saying, well, virtual doesn't work. Because in my household, virtual works fantastically. But that's just me. There's also students virtual doesn't work for. But what my long-term point is, I would hate to see a program that we do know works for some students disappear, because it appears when you lump it all together that virtual students are struggling. And I think that's very important to make those distinctions, because we know concurrent has problems. So when I'm looking at this and I see middle school, I'm thinking, well, it's concurrent. But an average parent outside may not be, you know, outside of this boardroom with not seeing this information on a regular basis, may just think, well, virtual learning is a waste of time. Why do we have computers for our students? Why are we even utilizing Canvas? Why are we doing these things? So I think it's very important, especially because technology, we can't escape it. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I know there's a better expression, but I can't think of one at this time. And so I think that's really, yeah, that was the last thing I had. So, but thank you. So.
Dr. Lateef, I just wanted to piggyback on when you look at data. I think Dr. McDade said everything is individual. I think you do look at the data and say what's happening with virtual. It doesn't mean that there's a plan to eliminate virtual learning, but when a segment of kids are not learning in that manner, then the parent may make a decision or the school may make a recommendation, I would assume. I want to ask Rita, and it's been a long time since the policy. I remember as a principal that there was a policy that when a child's letter grade dropped more than 2 letter grades, there was a policy where you had to notify the parent. Is that still the policy, or there's a modification?
Well, we still continue to have the expectation that parents are contacted if their student is not passing the course, Mrs. Jessie, but spelled out the way it used to be, it's not spelled out in the grading regulation the way it used to be spelled out.
Mr. Chairman?
Dade.
I just want to impress upon the board the importance that we not make too much out of this first quarter data in terms of understanding it better. I think that it doesn't give us the full picture, but I think it's information that we need to know that we should be bringing forward because it is a piece of the puzzle. But understanding that there are so many other snapshots that we have to look at that are happening in schools, and we have to also look long-term across multiple quarters to see what's happening from one quarter to the next. So this is our first snapshot that can give us some visibility into what's happening. And keep in mind that we anticipated this, right? We said that we knew coming in the door that first quarter data would would demonstrate the gaps that we knew existed from the spring SOL data. So we didn't anticipate that there was going to be a stark difference between what we saw in the first quarter grades and the growth assessment in comparison to what you saw in the State of the Schools report. So I just want to make sure that we're not trying to do too much analysis ahead of the school's root cause. And then also keeping in mind that this is only one snapshot in time, and that it really is going to take multiple looks at cross-section of data, both qualitative and quantitative, to really make strong decisions about next steps for instruction and how we support both students and staff. So I just want to say that I know that for all of us, there's a sense of urgency around this, and it is concerning the gaps that we know we're seeing that is coming out of this pandemic. But we also have to remember that we have things in place. We do have to stay the course. And again, recovery is going to take some time. I also want to address a comment that was made about the policy. I do think that we need to take a look at our grading policy. It may be time to revisit that and see whether or not that is working in the way that it should for the benefit of students, and as well as supporting teachers in making the right decisions educationally for students.
Great. I think, did you have one more comment, Ms. Wall?
I appreciate that reality check for us with, how to interpret this first quarter data. My question relates to the impact of quarantines on the grades. And so, obviously, we heard parents tonight say, they have kids who have been out multiple times. When you're out a week, 10 days, 14 days, it's hard. It really does affect kids. I know my kids, if they missed even one day, they were good students, and if they missed even one day, they were falling apart. So I know that is a factor. I'm sure there is an impact of those quarantines, and so I would hope that we can maybe more narrowly tailor our quarantines to the to the risk that we're trying to prevent with COVID, but also understand that we have put kids under tremendous risk because we keep sending them out on absences. But my question is regarding slide 4. So with that idea of quarantines, et cetera, 5 or more absences, that total number is 18%. Are the kids who are in quarantine, are they factored into that 18%?
That's a great question, Ms. Wall. So when students are quarantined and they are accessing content, they're not included in absences because they're counted as participating when they're accessing content. That's the way that the process is for attendance.
So follow-up would be for kids who are accessing their content asynchronously, how do we know that they're actually, how do we count them as present? I guess if they do an assignment or if they log in or something like that?
Mr. Chairman, Denise is here to
Yeah, Ms.
address that.
Huebner.
So I'll keep the answer fairly narrow. We do have a variety of attendance codes that indicate when a child is in isolation or when they are in quarantine and not accessing curriculum, or when they are in quarantine and accessing curriculum. And that triggers the different absences. So when a child is not accessing curriculum and is not in quarantine, that's when we consider it to be absent. But so there's the variety of codes that cover all the different scenarios. Out with illness, that's confirmed illness, out on quarantine, quarantine not accessing curriculum, and quarantine when they are accessing curriculum. And that is left up to the teachers. The teachers are the ones who typically record, the attendance. And so it is in a variety of ways. The completion of assignment, teachers contacting office hours, reaching out to students. There are a variety of ways that count as attending.
Okay, that's enlightening. So this 18% 5 or more absent number is basically that's in addition to the number of kids. And I know now it's around 400 something. Somebody quoted that, and I think I saw that the other day when I was looking on the website. But I know earlier on in the quarter it was really high. We had 1,000 students regularly on quarantine. So this 18% doesn't even capture the number of kids that we've kind of put out on a mandatory absence through quarantine, right? So that I think we're definitely this performance data has definitely been impacted by the policies that come from BDH, Prince William Health District that are kind of mandating at that higher level what we're doing here at the local level. Is that correct?
So yeah, that is correct. We do and we are required to follow the policies and the restrictions that are put in place by the Virginia Department of Health. We do collaborate with the health district, and we have expressed our concern. It's our primary goal to keep our kids in school. We want our children to learn. We want them to be with us. And so we do try to use the least restrictive situation.
Thank you, Ms. Huebner. And to that note, some of the school districts in the regional area have decided to, while I, have serious concerns about the quarantining and the quarantine restrictions and requirements by the VDH, and I disagree with them. But many of the school divisions have, we've had the least restrictive, meaning we have the 7 days and the 5 days. I mean, Loudoun and Fairfax have just sort of decided to follow along with what we've been doing since the beginning. So our quarantine number days, I think, are less than divisions our size across the state. Thank you for this, Dr. McDade. I think as you do the root cause analysis, looking at maybe the students who've been quarantined to see how their grades are might be one thing to look at. Just, as we start, advocating for reducing quarantine times over the next few months, it would be helpful to see what the quarantines are doing to our students. While I really do appreciate this, I think it is important for the public and for the parents that the board recognizes that it's not just the students failing that is concerning. It is the students not getting the A's they were, who are now getting B's, the kids getting C's who are not getting B's. It is the students across the division, not just the ones failing. It's everybody who's not performing where they normally perform. That is a serious concern by the board, by Dr. McDade, and as noted by Dr. McDade's comments, this is something we're going to address over time, and we're going to make adjustments accordingly. So as you look at the slides and you see, okay, students failing, there's more to it than that. There are our students, and I want to thank our teachers who really are working overtime, full-time, because they see the student who's getting a B and a C who used to get an A. They're dealing with that kid and that kid's stress. They're seeing the students who are getting C's who used to get B's and D's who used to get A's and B's. They're seeing that. So it's not just the students failing. Our teachers are trying to do the heavy lifting for everyone. And, I have seen some amazing teachers, putting out extra assignments, extra homework, things to help the student understand and realize the mastery of the information with sort of project-based learning assignments and extra credit assignments. And I found that to be, in my experience and parents who are reporting to me, very helpful in students recovering things that they may have missed last year. So an extra credit assignment may be a math section that they didn't really, maybe cover real well last year, and so we'll give that as an extra homework assignment, and you turn it in, you get some extra credit, but it shows mastery of information, that actually that math assignment helps this current math assessment. Dr. McDade, I truly appreciate this. While universities are going to test optional, they are now looking at your grades. That becomes more of a value to the universities, because if we're not going to look at SATs and ACTs, we're looking at grades. And so the reason this board has asked for grades, and we're looking at them and we're concerned, and we're all working towards this. It's not just, one of us, or it's all of us, because the stakes are very high. The stakes are high for our children, especially our high school students, and so in them learning the material is the highest stake. And of all the issues that are out there, this is the board's highest priority, is to make sure our students are learning. And so I can't thank you enough for providing this reporting. We will continue to look forward to these reports and look forward to the root cause analysis effort, and we thank you. And I think we'll move on to the next topic, which is the VSBA Academy Awards. So once a year, there's a reason we're having our school board meeting tonight. We normally do it on Wednesdays. We're doing it on a Tuesday because the school boards across the state are attending a conference hosted by the Virginia School Board Association. It's a 2-day conference, and so at around this time each year we award board members who've taken credits, courses, to extend their knowledge in understanding of how school boards should work, ought to work, and best practices. So tonight, on behalf of the Virginia School Boards Association, I am pleased to announce awards earned by our board members to the VSBA Academy for their commitment to effective school board governance. I might add, as I mentioned this, the pandemic was brutal on boards across the country. It was brutal on us trying to figure out how best we can navigate and manage what we were facing. My school board members here, I can tell you, every time I called them, they were on some session, they were watching some video, some Zoom conference with the VSBA or other national organizations to help us better inform ourselves on how best to do what we need to do for our students and our faculty. So I'd like to recognize Virginia School Board Association will be recognizing Mrs. Adele Jackson this evening, Mrs. Lily Jesse. So Mrs. Adele Jackson, the Brentsville District, Mrs. Lily Jesse of the Occoquan District, Mrs. Jennifer Wall of the Gainesville District, Miss Lori Williams of the Woodbridge District, Vice Chair Lisa Zargapur of the Coles District, and myself. And so, congratulations. What? No, we're not. We're supposed to what? Congratulations to all of you, and thank you for your dedicated service to our Prince William County community. Ms. Simpson, the clerk, will have certificates for each of you recognizing your efforts.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I waited all year. Usually we get to know what level everyone got to. We're not doing that anymore, because like
I don't-
waited for.
They did it differently.
Okay,
It's not
thank
my
you,
fault.
because like I was confused, because you know, I was really trying to beat Betty Covington's old record and get the most attendance, but I'm still working towards that. So, sorry, I just didn't know we changed the format. Thank you.
Wonderful. So congratulations to all of you, and thank you for your dedicated service to our county and our school division. Next, we'll go to board matters. We'll start with Mr. Wilk this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, want to just recognize a couple events. First, I did attend Potomac Shores Middle School, had a Veterans Day breakfast last Friday, hosted by the PTO. Had great conversations with veterans and men and women who have served or are actively serving our country. There is a desire for more parent volunteers and helping in potentially the schools at the secondary level. So that was good to hear from them. Also visited Covington Harper, which is right down the road from them. Listened and joined a strings lesson, and then was a participant in a pre-K classroom as the kids colored military hearts. Attended and visited Potomac Middle School, not to be confused with Potomac Shores. That's right across the street off of Route 1. Visited Henderson Elementary, participated briefly in a choral and PE class. Stopped by Swans Creek. Montclair Elementary had a wonderful military veterans parade that they quickly transferred inside as a result of rain. Again, many good conversations with veterans and thanking them for their service. And looking forward, tomorrow there's a Montclair event as well. Want to recognize the Forest Park football team and attending their playoff game. They qualified for the playoffs for the first time in a number of years. Although it was not the desired outcome that I wanted for my team, they had a great season. And then I did have a chance to be the mascot for the second half of the game. So that was fun. Those head things are not really comfortable. Mr. Crow can attest. He saw me there. I was killing it, right? Yes. Just want a brief update, as I mentioned in my last board matters, about the Safe Schools Committee. The Safe Schools Committee did meet for our November meeting following our board meeting. Concerns were brought up, bless you, by the representatives. Every board member has a representative. Ms. Jessie mentioned she appointed hers tonight, so we have a full slate of every board member has a rep on that committee, so 8 reps, and they're the voting members. So the school board members, Ms. Wall and I, don't actually get to vote. We can be there and participate. But a number of issues and behavioral items did come up, and we moved to add a December meeting. Normally, we don't meet in December. We wait till January, but we will have a December meeting where the committee will discuss possibly making recommendations to the school board and the superintendent. So really excited about the work that's being done there. Want to thank Dr. Hart, Mr. Crow, and their leadership there. And look forward to more events coming up for the holiday season. Thank you.
Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Dr. Lateef. Since the last meeting, I was able to attend Patriots' final regular game of the season with Ms. Wall. It was Patriot versus Battlefield. And my family and I were fortunate also to attend the Brentsville District game this past Friday. I want to thank T. Craig Woods staff for inviting me to the Veterans Day Parade and celebration. It was a wonderful event. And to Ms. Jex and Dr. Meintz for allowing me to come and tour their building, talk with staff. I know that they're extremely busy, and I just appreciate their time. Thank you to all staff that have been reaching out to me. I continue to listen, and I look forward to December's discussion. Listening to teacher concerns is directly linked to student success. As Ms. Wall may mention, I believe she said she was going to, that we are going to be working out logistics to hold office hours soon, and my other neighbor, Ms. Zagabor, and I will be discussing it soon as well. I also want to thank Ms. Williams for your help on talking me through what the VSBA Delegate Assembly was going to be like and taking the time Saturday to meet with me. Yesterday, I attended the VSBA Delegate Assembly, and for the next 3 days, myself and other board members will be attending further VSBA conference, which is, I think Dr. Lateef mentioned why we're meeting today. And as always, thank you to those who came this evening, and have a great night. Thank you.
Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Vice Chairman, Chairwoman, sorry. So I want to start out by thanking teachers for all their hard work, and especially those who are working with our English language learner population students and our special education students, because I know you have a heavy lift, and I really just want to thank all of our teachers, and especially those teachers, for all you're doing to try to help our students. I know you have love of students and desire to help them succeed as your highest priorities. And I also wanted to say I will be visiting Battlefield High School later this month with Delegate Helmer to present some resolutions to the several school teams at Battlefield High School, and I'll give you more updates on that next time we meet. I was able to attend the Senior Regional Orchestra's performance this last weekend. It was just so great to sit in the audience and hear that beautiful, amazing performance. It was bittersweet because I just could not get out of my mind the students who didn't get to do that last year because of COVID and everything else. But nonetheless, I was so very proud of those students, and they did a great job. Colgan High School had an incredible showing of, according to my count, 20 students earning a spot in this very difficult to get into Senior Regional Orchestra, and that's a tribute to the fantastic specialty performing arts program that Colgan houses here in PWCS. Battlefield students also represented us well with 8 students, and so from the Gainesville district, since I only have that one high school, I want to congratulate Phoebe Yoon for flute, Katie Railsback English horn, Christian Orico for violin, Megan Vu violin, Ian Rinker violin, Katie Vu cello, and Chris Wall bass. They had an amazing selection of music. I want to thank, COVID's silver lining is that it has brought a lot of parents into their children's classrooms, and so parents are more involved and engaged than ever before, and education is on the top mind for so many of our parents. I encourage the division to address the sincerely held concerns about our policies, including our masks and quarantines, whatever we can do. If it's advocacy that we need to do to the state level, then I encourage us to do it. And I want to thank Dr. McDade for that first quarter update. As Justice Louis Brandeis so famously said on the topic of transparency, sunlight is said to be the best of disinfectants, and I appreciate the sunlight that you provided for us tonight on our first quarter data, and I know it will be useful as we move forward. As Ms. Jackson mentioned, in the coming weeks we will be holding office hours for Gainesville, Brentsville districts for community and parent interaction, and we'll be taking input, questions, and concerns, and we'll share more details of that through social media. And as always, please feel free to reach out to me directly through email or phone, and I am happy to discuss with anybody any concerns. Thank you.
Ms. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just first want to start out by saying it was my pleasure to attend last Saturday an event a fundraising event held by Old Bridge Orchestra. Wait, say it. I knew I was going to mess it up. I'm sorry. Old Bridge Chamber Orchestra hosted an event that benefited Featherstone Elementary School in starting a choir program. The orchestra played magnificently. It was just amazing. and our own superintendent was the host the MC at the event. It featured artwork from students at both Colgan and Featherstone Elementary as they interpreted the music that they heard through art. And then there was also a young woman from Colgan High School who won an award. Forgive me because I do not remember her name, but I believe it is been posted somewhere, but I'll follow up. I also want to just take this opportunity to say I was able to attend the VSBA Northeastern's regional meeting that was held last week. It was great to talk to other school board members from around the Northeast region and share updates in preparation for the VSBA conference that actually started today. I was able to attend the early bird session on equity. It was quite interesting to hear from the presenters and other school board members across the state as we looked at equity in reference to not only budgeting but policies and other topics. I expect to learn more as the conference runs through Friday. It's a hybrid format this year, so some people will be there in person, some people will be there virtually. I also attended the 4-part seminar series by RELI, which is the Regional Elected Officials seminar series that's hosted by George Mason University. The last one was Equity in Budgeting. So equity, I don't think, is going away, and I also appreciate everyone's focus on equity because it is our job to provide resources to all students and to meet them where they are. If you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to take 30 extra seconds because the Governor School Board meeting was also held on 11/10/21. We did an update on student performance, heard about the additional supports and resources that our students are using, are available to our students, and what is being done to support our Prince William County students at the Governor's School, as well as all students, information on calendar dates and upcoming events. And then I just would like to thank everyone who attended my town hall on culturally responsive instruction. I think it was a very well-attended event. I want to thank all of my panelists who participated. During the town hall, when the information was being presented on culturally responsive instruction, I had the vantage point to be able to look across the audience and saw that everyone was thoroughly interested in the material that was being presented. I am especially grateful to Ms. Little for coming to the school board, suggesting the idea, and then allowing me to partner with her to pull off the town hall. I think it provided an excellent educational opportunity and learning format for all those who attended. And I do hope that other board members or members of the community follow suit. It was not a town hall on culturally critical race theory. So I know that there has been outcry from some members of the public to host one, and I encourage them to do so. Thank you.
Ms. Jessie?
Good evening. First of all, I want to say thank you to Dr. McDade and our staff. I know it's a great deal of work. I mentioned Jennifer and collecting the data, but I also wanted to thank principals because when we collect data here, somebody has to send it up. So it's just extra work for everyone, and it's been a challenging year. I wanted to talk a little bit about community engagement. There are sororities and fraternities in this school system in Prince William County who do a phenomenal amount of work with our kids. So I think I have a slide presentation. So, not in the pictures, Ms. Lori Williams, who also attended. This is the Phi Lambda Lambda chapter of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, and this was their Achievement Week celebration. This chapter does so much work. First of all, this Achievement Award, I'm going to talk about that particular event, but they are also engaged in a mentorship program called Omega U, and when George Hampton Award, George Hampton's name was replaced to Godwin School, but there's a George Hampton Foundation. They give scholarships in his honor. There are so many activities that they're engaged in, and I just want to highlight a few things because I think it's important for us to realize that we need help as a community. If there's a village, and Dr. McDade talked about community involvement and community engagement, I want to highlight this particular chapter tonight. So I think I have another slide. This is one of our essay winners. Her name is Kayla Morgan, and she's from Cogan High School. And this event, and there's the president, the Basileus, of course, he's very active. In fact, he says to me, and Joe, I see Mr. Fletcher is there. He's a big-time Omega. But they'll say, anything the school board wants, you can get. And so this young lady was the first place winner. And the second place winner was Eric Kelly, and he's from Cogan High School also. But these students will, a third place winner, I don't have a photo, is Theodore Strange from Christ Chapel Academy. But these students will be able to compete for a $5,000 scholarship at the national level. The last photo is something that, as we talk about history, and we talk about knowing our history, I was here when Dumfries Elementary as a Title I supervisor, and I had no idea that there was there's a slave cemetery on the grounds, near the grounds of that school. And this lady is a friend of mine. Her name is Norma Fields. And she and Joanne Bonarise, many of you know Joanne, are people who work they maintain that cemetery. The Omegas also help with the maintenance of that cemetery. I know that Harry Wiggins also helps with that cemetery. So I wanted to just congratulate the men of Omega Psi Phi, and I'm sure Mr. Joe Fletcher will want me to say it is the Phi Lambda Lambda chapter of Omega Psi Phi Incorporated. Am I right? Raise your hand. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Ms. Zarga.
Thank you, Dr. Lateef. So I promise you this has something to do with schools. I'll get to it in a second. So earlier this week, I was trying to do an order on my phone to order my tall vanilla latte made with whole milk and an extra pump of vanilla. And it wasn't going through because apparently they didn't have enough people working in the Starbucks. And they had to turn off the mobile order piece, and I had to go in and order like a regular person. And it struck me that I am a teacher, and I see the stress that my colleagues are going through every day. I'm watching my planning periods get whittled down into other activities and things, which, in my world, I am where I am. It's fine. I'm there for my students, but I was thinking about it in terms of Starbucks. Like, I really don't want to see that happening in education. I know we have a bus driver shortage, and I've received some emails this week with concerns about the buses. And there's concerns about how much stuff we're piling on teachers' plates, which is considerable, because we have to evaluate a little more data. There's not more people in the building to help with this data evaluation and disaggregation and all that. So, as we get toward, we get further into this school year, we heard a report of what's going on in the first quarter. I just want to, just remind us, we're kind of still in this pandemic, but I'm really hoping that with more people being vaccinated, we can maybe get volunteers back into the schools. We can have more parent involvement inside the schools. That's been missing for a long, long time. I think some people really, really are looking forward to getting back. Heard parents tonight talking about quarantines. I can tell you as a teacher, it's really hard to have a kid miss several of your classes, and it's just a lot. The community you're building in your classroom gets broken in these little weird pieces over time. So this is very, very challenging for all of us. So I just wanted to kind of relate my Starbucks experience with, I hope we don't have to turn off mobile orders for our own educations here. I know, it is what it is. I want to congratulate the Colgan girls field hockey for a fantastic year. And I don't know any updates. Dr. Lateef, have you heard anything about the Colgan girls volleyball team? How they're doing? They're winning? They won! Woo! All right, good job. Sorry, I'm very excited. Sad we can't be there, but oh well. And guess what? Benton's middle school volleyball was undefeated this year, so we may have a really good pipeline. Marshall Robotics apparently has been on fire lately, and Colgan students also launched the first ever outdoor recycling program. So we got a lot going on. I love that these students are engaged. They're showing it in these extra activities that really engage them and interest them. And we're going to get through this. Oh, I have to say the thing, don't I, Dr. Lateef? I have to say, wear your mask, wash your hands, keep your distance. If you can, get vaccinated. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. To add on to Ms. Zargapor's statement about robotics, Jen Wall's discussion on music, theater, sports are all back in full swing. And I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like, we're doing even better than we normally do at it across the division. And I congratulate all those who've competed, all those who've tried out, all those who haven't made a team, who've made the teams, who've succeeded, who've had seasons with victories and losses. It's been a great year so far, and I congratulate all of you for those robotics teams that are just starting their season. Fantastic. Best wishes to all of you. Take a moment to highlight a community member. There's a great Facebook page, if you don't follow, it's called Prince William County Sports. It's the administrator is Alex Khu, K-H-U. He crowdsources the information. There's other administrators and folks. It is an outstanding source for information about Prince William County sports. He does a great service to the community, highlighting students across the division in all different sports, and also the other, the little leagues we have and the rec leagues we have across the county. And I want to congratulate him and all those who help support his effort to get information out there. When the local newspapers, when the Washington Post abandoned their office, they abandoned their office here in Prince William County, and they left. They don't report on our sports. They don't report on what's happening in Prince William County. We have local news outlets, Inside Nova, Prince William Times, Potomac Local, Bristow Beat. They do their best to have it, but a lot of them don't have full-time sports reporters. And so folks in the community have stepped up to cover that, and I really do congratulate them and thank them for that. It is really a great service. This discussion about parental engagement and parents having a say, if the public doesn't know, 7 members of this board have either children or grandchildren in the school system currently. We are parents. The folks that have, even the folks that ran against most of us are parents. The folks who sit on our Superintendent's Advisory Council are parents. The parents in our PTOs obviously are parents. We take very seriously the commitment by our parents, families. We heard from them throughout the pandemic. We took what they said very seriously, and we've tried to craft a common sense approach to the return to school, the getting back into school, and doing it safely. And we're going to try to continue to do that as we struggle through the recovery and the re-engagement process for our students. And so our system has Parent View, it has Canvas. The teachers cannot do this alone. The recovery for the learning it's a team approach. It's the student is involved, the teacher's involved, our teaching assistants are involved, our cafeteria workers are involved, but our parents are also involved. Take an opportunity to get familiar with Parent View, Canvas. It allows you to engage with your students' learning, see what kind of extra opportunities there are in Canvas, other resources. Take advantage of the opportunities that the schools are offering for your student to catch up if need be. And you can always email your principals, your assistant principals, your students' counselors. Please do that. The only way we get through this is by doing it together, and we can. I mean, I have no doubt. I've seen this, the students are back. They're back with not a vengeance, let's say they're back with a passion in school this year, and they are just thrilled to be back, and they've embraced it, and now we just have to help them do what they came here for first and foremost, which is the learning. So thank you all, and have a happy Thanksgiving. And at this time, the meeting is adjourned.